new episode of Chasing 69, a New York Jets podcast. I am Blake Pace alongside Teddy Pristach, who is back from vacation. It was very, very boring solo podcast last week, Teddy. I got about a half an hour in, ran out of stuff to talk about. It's fine doing solo pods when it's about the league, but when it's one specific team and they haven't done anything over the span of that week, I'm surprised they even made it to 30 minutes. Probably half of that was just rambling, but welcome back. How was vacation? Are you feeling rested and restored? I know you've been working hard for a month here on the podcast, so I'm glad to see you took some well-deserved time off.
Yeah, I'm feeling okay. As you can hear, I'm a little sick, which happened on vacation, but vacation was a blast. It was relaxing. Your solo pod was great. And yeah, dude, I mean, it sucks to be sick, but I'm real excited to be back and talk about the Jets. And we're 9 days away from the draft. So 8 days, I think, when this drops.
By the time,
it's pretty, I mean, we're getting there. I understand this is kind of that, like, all right, let's get there, let's make it happen type of time period.
Right. And especially the last few weeks, I feel like this always happens with free agency where, it kicks off middle of March, that first month, ton of stuff going down, signings, all that. But really, I mean, you take a look at the available free agents. There's a ton of great players that are left unsigned, but NFL teams just know after the first wave or two of free agency, it's like, okay, hold on. I'm going to focus. Our organization's focused on the draft. We're finishing up all that draft prep. Free agency part 2 or part 3 will pick up after the draft. So it's really slowed down across the league outside of, these wide receivers still being out there. I keep seeing stuff and not that we need to talk. We've talked about it a couple episodes in a row now, but I just saw more updates that Thibodeaux's done talking contracts at the moment with the 49ers. AJ Brown took Tennessee out of his Twitter bio. It went from being DK Metcalf was probably the most likely to get moved, and now I feel like he's the least likely of the 3 to get moved, just where things are going. Really interesting because the timing of it heading up into the draft, if you are going to trade one of those guys, you want to do it now where you can use those picks. Probably don't see them getting traded unless they threaten to hold out, but always interesting to see this continue to develop in what's a weird offseason.
Yeah, I mean, like we said a few weeks ago, it wasn't the most likely, but all it takes is just something to break down or someone to snap or say, that's not good enough for me. And then that's how these deals happen. So lately, like the AJ Brown stuff has been getting me. I mean, I know like I got to just stay even keeled because I got to be realistic about it. But like just the idea that it would just be so, I'm excited for these rookie receivers, but getting one of these like not all time, but you know what I mean? One of these really good guys would be really great.
Yeah, because you're drafting and projecting what these guys will be. We already know AJ Brown, Deebo Samuel, and DK Metcalf are some of the youngest, most talented receivers in the league. So
exactly.
But yeah, I don't think we need to. We've talked about this enough. Quick rundown for today. This is going to be our Would You Rather podcast. We're going to go through a few hypotheticals for the NFL draft. Next week,
I feel like we're back in like our eighth grade years.
I know.
Playing Would You Rather?
Yeah, we'll play Spin the Bottle next week with each other.
Right. Yeah.
20 questions. Yep.
All right.
But yeah, we're going to start with some housekeeping. We'll take a look at some updated top 30 visits, some, virtual meetings, private meetings, local visits that the Jets are having before the draft, and kind of what we can learn from the 2 different types of meetings that they're having. And then, like I said, we'll go into that Would You Rather. Just a couple of, I think we'll do 5 big hypotheticals surrounding the draft and which one we personally would rather. But first off, Teddy, the boys are back in the building. Social media was a buzzing. Everybody back there. For you, I feel like that's something that the real Jets fans like to see. They like to see all the social media, the players back in the building. Was it fun? What was it now? It'll be 2 days ago when this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, Monday. To be honest with you, I didn't even know that was about to happen. Maybe I'm just not paying good enough attention, but it was great. You love to see them back and just like practicing and all being together, and it just makes it feel so real, but there's still such a long way to go that it is what it is, but it was fun as it can be.
Right. And we were DMing each other. What did
good old Zach Wilson?
Like? Well, yeah. First off, Zach look
at that hair.
Looks 10 years old. He looks like a child.
Dude, he's always looked like a child.
The long hair
Like,
almost makes it look like it almost makes him look younger because he looks like a middle school kid that's like
yeah,
growing out his hair for the first time. It's like when the
yeah,
two of us tried to for the first time in like 4th or 5th grade. And I don't know. He looks like such a baby. And it's
yeah,
obviously the
he
face, no
does.
facial
But
hair,
he's a
but
stud. And I
yep,
think it's funny because I like to think he's going to be the next Aaron Rodgers, and
that's why he's
he's going
growing
to
the
grow out a
mullet.
mullet and look really ugly like Aaron Rodgers does.
Yep. He's going to say that it's for a Halloween costume. And then after Halloween, he's just going to keep it and never cut it again. So, um, speaking of which, I'm very upset with you because you took a hold of our Twitter account, which by the way, fuck,
Which I do a lot.
we should have mentioned it. Follow us on Twitter at NYJ_chasing69. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow Teddy at Teddy Huncho, me at Blake Andrew Pace. We let that get a few minutes in too long, but you took over the Twitter and you said you don't care about the Wilson mullet. What's up with that?
Well, the first thing I'll say is every time I'm using the Twitter, I feel like it's like, can I say what I think, even though it's mine and Blake's Twitter, But I like to just go for it anyway.
Yeah, I
Um,
think people can also tell probably,
right.
at least
Yeah,
if they know the
100%.
two of us and they know the two sides that we come from, I think they can
Right.
tell when
And
it's
if you
tweeting.
don't, you'll get to know.
Yep,
But
exactly.
but it really just comes from I feel like I'm kind of like jaded in a way where, and I get that this is like the world we live in, but it's just anything happens and everyone needs to like talk about it. And it's just like sometimes I don't care. Like I don't care that our quarterback has a mullet. That doesn't make me think he's going to be any better or any worse, But it's
Makes me
that
think he's
time of year
cooler.
when these are the things we're talking about.
Right. Slow news day. It's you got to
Right.
find something to talk about. And so everybody's talking
Right.
about, and it's honestly, it's not long hair. I mean, it's just a little
It's
bit
yeah, yeah.
back. It's like he started it a month or
He's
two
probably
ago.
about to get a haircut.
Exactly. He's like, oh yeah, I haven't been going out and I haven't seen my barber or whatever. I was throwing passes with all my boys. Braxton Berrios is
Oh
good.
yeah.
Speaking of him, I got a DM from the guy that made those shirts. Like, hey, these things are
Zach Wilson
selling
is
like,
good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
dude, that guy's everywhere. I got a DM
He's
from him as
crushing it.
well.
I'm,
But
I'm,
yeah, maybe
I
we
might
should
buy
get
one
some.
of these days. I might have to do it. So real quick, gambling odds, Vegas odds. What are we setting that you'll grow a mullet with me?
That I'll grow a mullet with you.
Yeah.
I mean, probably like plus 600.
This is great YouTube stuff here.
Dude.
Hi,
Oh
River.
my God. I was just like, what is happening?
Oh, geez. I didn't even notice the door open.
Me neither. That was
Yeah,
really
that
crazy.
was weird.
My
For
girlfriend just
those,
came in with the dog
yeah, for those
and
just
attacked
listening.
me, and I
Yeah.
had no clue what was going on.
I was very surprised. For some reason, I thought River had just gotten in. I was like, oh, wait,
I
Hannah's
was like,
holding him
what's
up.
happening? What were we talking about? I completely
We were
lost
talking
my
about the
train of
odds
thought now.
you'll get a mullet with me.
Oh yeah, probably not. I mean, you'll
Yeah.
probably definitely get a mullet. That's such a you thing to do.
I got into a
But
fight with my girlfriend Leah about a mullet about a year ago, and I think I'm ready to do it again. I tried growing a small one a couple years back,
yeah,
but
you
I
should
think I
do it.
might.
And if you do it, I'll give you $1.
That works for me. I love it. Okay, perfect. All right, we're on there. Don't even need to compete and grow one together. Zach Wilson, if you're listening, and we know you are. We know you're
Yeah.
listening,
What up,
Zach Wilson.
Zach?
What's up? I'll grow a
If
mullet
Zach
with you.
Wilson's listening, I'll grow a mullet.
Huh.
Not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea. I like that. Clip that. All right. Moving along, there's no other real housekeeping stuff aside from more visits that we're getting with the Jets. Teddy, I said it on last week's pod. I think the big thing to pick up with meetings for the top players, for the names that are known, it's who's in consideration at 4, 10, who could possibly be into consideration in a trade back or a trade back into the first round. So a lot of those top names. And then with the guys that are less known, and really we're going to go through all the guys today outside of 1 or 2, it's a lot of lower tier, late round guys. That just shows you what positions they're going to be targeting on days 2 and 3. And as we'll see, we've got 2 cornerbacks to update on, another edge, defensive lineman, linebacker, running back, safety, and 2 more wide receivers. So, taking it through there, the 2 cornerbacks, Jalen Watson, virtual meeting out of Washington State, Leonard Johnson, they went to their pro day at Duke. Kind of just shows you, hey, we definitely have our starters at cornerback, and we've looked at some of the top guys already. We're going to probably be addressing this position in either day 2 or day 3. We'll talk about cornerbacks maybe a little bit later on if we want, but a position that's pretty deep in this class. So definitely some names to keep an eye on in that back half. The big name is Jermaine Johnson, edge rusher, that they brought into a top 30 visit from Florida State. To me, that just shows a scenario where maybe they do not go edge at number 4, who could be available at pick number 10 for them if they try and scoop up an edge at that pick. Defensive lineman Demetrius Taylor, pro day visit at Appalachian State. Small school, less known guy. I've been on board that they want to go defensive tackle. I'm feeling less confident they do it in day 2. I think it might be something they wait for in day 3, unless a really talented guy falls to them at 35 or 38, but something to consider there. Brandon Smith, top 30 visit at Penn State. That's one of those guys I keep hearing more about, seeing more about. He's going to be a late day 2, early day 3 guy, but I almost think that that's one of those visits where you could really see the Jets. That it's tough to project if he's going to be available, but he's a guy that I could see, just based on his fit, the Jets taking a little bit of a shot on earlier than maybe most teams would. So that's a name I would kind of just pencil in and keep an eye on as we get toward day 2 and day 3 of the draft. Virtual meeting with BJ Baylor from Oregon State, running back. Had a private workout with safety Tariq Carpenter out of Georgia Tech. So that's another position safety there. Like we've said, could be in play day 2 and day 3. And then 2 more visits with wide receivers, Bo Melton, local guy out of Rutgers, and Tazir Mack, a top 30 visit for a receiver from Pittsburgh. Anything at all, Teddy, sticking out to you about those names? It's really not. We've already had the visits with the top guys at this point, so not much to take away from that list there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, seeing Jermaine Johnson there is just, it's good to kind of see it, check it off the list to know that they're doing their homework on him. And I like the way you put it, that it just gives you an insight kind of into what positions they're looking for targeting in the draft. I like to see the linebacker because, I'm still not confident in these linebacker groups. So yeah, not a whole bunch to add, but definitely I'll keep an eye on Brandon Smith.
The one thing that I like as well, too, specifically going back to these wide receivers, I wanted to save them for last for a specific reason. A guy like Bo Melton, it almost, to me, because there's a lot of conversation around what they'll do at 10. Is it going to be the big-bodied guy in Drake London? Are they going to go speed in Jamison Williams? When you take a look at the type of player that these wide receivers are in later days, it kind of almost helps you paint a clearer picture on where they might go. So Bo Melton, great vertical speed, smaller guy, blazing fast, kind of replicates what a Jamison Williams would do, but you could get him in round 5 or round 6 or, sometime in day 3. So if they're thinking, okay, maybe we double up at wide receiver, and if we've got a speed guy late day 3 that we want to get, maybe we target Drake London at pick 10. So that's just one thing I like to keep an eye on, is the kind of receiver that they look at in those later days and say, okay, maybe they'll try and get that guy then and address, a bigger bodied Drake London at pick 10. So that's just the one thing I saw. That Tazir Mack, some people have him outside of like the top 60 receivers in this class. So I don't know too much there with him, but just another guy's a smaller build as well too. But
interesting perspective there.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think on that? Do you think that maybe they're just, checking?
I mean, I think it obviously depends. I mean, I think the idea that they'd be going for smaller guys in the later rounds could lead them to believe they would want a bigger guy in the early rounds. Makes sense, but I mean, who knows at the end of the day?
Yeah. Yep. All right, cool. Well, yeah, like I said, not a ton to take away with those visits. We've had the big ones out of the way by now. They've done their research on the top names, but let's move on to would you rather. 5 quick hypotheticals for the NFL draft. And I think we kind of came to this idea because there are so many different routes that the Jets can choose to go in during draft week. And
I saw someone tweet today, and I forgot who it was, of course, but they just said, like, it might have been a Jets person, actually, maybe Connor Hughes. They said, I've been in the draft, doing draft scouting stuff for 20 years, and this is the hardest year to make mock drafts. And it really is. Like, last year at this time, I really felt like I can tell you who's going at 1, 2, 3, 4, like the top 10. Like, yeah, even if they were slight variations, like everyone was pretty confident in what was going to go down. This year, number one feels like a question mark. Everything in between, feels like a question mark. And when you're the Jets at 4-10, it's just one of those years where it's like, okay, we really got to see how this falls.
Right. And I think that's why you have to do extra work, because last year, if you had the fourth pick, you knew quarterbacks were going 1, 2, and 3. Atlanta was there and they knew they were going to take Kyle Pitts. They didn't have to think much about it because they knew every team ahead of them was going quarterback. What if 1 through 3 is edge, edge, edge? What do the Jets do then? What
It
if
keeps me up at night
it's
thinking
great?
about
It's
it
they've
because I
got so
don't
much.
know.
Well, and it falls into day 2 as well. And we've talked about this draft class, picks 1 through 6. I feel like you're getting the top, maybe even top 7, maybe 1 through 7. There's like the top elite guys, and then everything beyond that is just kind of, you have no idea how teams evaluate this class, because outside of the top 7, it is so mixed in there with day 2 talent. So, yeah, going to be really interesting. So yeah, a couple of would you rathers. We're going to start right at that number 4 pick, Teddy. This is just a crazy hypothetical. Say picks 1, 2, and 3 are like last year. They go quarterback, quarterback, quarterback. You're sitting at the board. You're the Jets at 4. Kayvon Thibodeaux available. Trayvon Walker available. Aiden Hutchinson available. Sauce Gardner, Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu. Who would you rather draft out of that group at pick 4?
Yeah. Basically, what we're saying here is you got the 3 edge rushers, KT Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, and you got Sauce Gardner. You got Ike Ekwonu. Who's the guy that we're going to take? For me, and this feels so weird because we all think that the Jets are going to end up getting Kayvon Thibodeaux, that's the most likely scenario. But in my opinion, Kayvon Thibodeaux is my number 1 out of the edge rushers. And I don't know, maybe you can enlighten me on this a little bit, but why do you see Aiden Hutchinson being that most consensus number 1 pick? Is it just the technicality? Is it because when I look at KT and Hutchinson, it's kind of like yin and yang to me, where Hutchinson is kind of the less athletic guy who's very technically sound, and has all the moves in his arsenal and knows what he's doing with his hands and knows how to kind of play with a tackle until it's time to make his move. Where KT, maybe he's less technically sound, but he explodes off the line and he seems to just blow up plays. And to me, I'd rather have the more athletic, the guy with the bigger ability, especially when I'm when we're talking about the Jets, and I believe in the Jets coaching staff and I believe in Robert Saleh. And I think they're going to be able to coach that up as opposed to a guy who already kind of has that technical ability, but maybe doesn't have the same type of ceiling with his athletic ability. So, I mean, why do you think that Hutch is most consensusly the number one guy?
Yeah, I think he gets the edge above him because he is that polished 3-down player right out the gate. Like you said, better with his hands, kind of just a more polished, NFL ready, sit him on the field day 1 and he's good to go. It almost, in a different way, and we don't get the chance to talk about this class at this position too often, but it reminds me a little bit of the quarterback position, where there are 5 guys in this mix here that you could all say could be the best of this class. Kenny Pickett is probably going to go first out of all of them because he's just the most ready guy. There's a chance he goes pick 6 to Carolina. I personally have him as the 4th best in this class, but I understand he is the most pro-ready guy. That's not the way that I would like to draft players. And it's kind of like you said, I'd rather take the guy that I could see turning into the best player in this class, where I invest the time into working with him and, elevate his talent to be the guy that he should be. You're exactly right. Kayvon Thibodeaux, I finished my grades for my top 100. He is my number 2 player, right behind Ike Ekwonu. I have him above Aiden Hutchinson, Trayvon Walker, Jermaine Johnson, everybody else. It's Ike at 1 and Kayvon slightly behind it too. He, to me, is just, if you're projecting what players can be in the NFL, I think he is a guy where, you get him with the coaching staff, like you mentioned, in New York, that has done wonders developing defensive line talent. And he's the guy I think you could really turn into a stud at the position. And I think he had a down year. The character stuff that we've talked about on pods before has rubbed teams the wrong way. I don't know after what Jacksonville did this past year and how much of a joke they looked like. I think they probably just want to go for a safer option. I think you look at Detroit at pick 2, why they wouldn't go Thibodeaux. I think they, Dan Campbell is that really odd culture guy to the point where it feels corny, but that kind of fits exactly what Aiden Hutchinson is. So I think you look at those two teams, and I think they're probably just looking to play it really safe at the top and get a guy that is going to be a sound player, where, it could really play out for the Jets where they get the best edge guy in this class, and two other players go before Thibodeaux does.
Yeah, it really is just interesting to think about, because exactly what you said, the variation in how people rank these players. For me, I mean, I don't know a ton about the other teams' defensive schemes, but excuse me, when it comes to the Jets, what I love about Thibodeaux, and again, like why I think he fits so well, is the Jets aren't going to be asking him to play this kind of like hold up, like play it safe, set the edge and kind of stay there, play contain. They're going to be asking him to get to the quarterback basically as quick as they can. And that's something the Jets have 100% lacked, and we all know it, is just the ability to get to the quarterback quickly. And so just the fact that his, in my opinion, best trait is that just like elite first step and get off right off the ball, I think that's just so huge. And just the size and the build, and he just really is like exactly what you want to see.
Yeah, no, you're dead on. And like we said a couple of times, the best player on the defensive line for the Jets last year played 52% of snaps. It is not going to be a problem if Kayvon Thibodeaux is not on the field in run situations. I think the plan could almost be, because we've seen a little bit about this in their plans with John Franklin Myers, he could be on the outside on rundown situations, and they can kick him into the 3-tech and passing, put Kayvon at the wide 9, and boom, there you go. That's got your situations. Now, it's not going to be that Kayvon is never out there on first and second down, but I think there's that time where he can develop into that 3-down player. And a lot of that will have to do with the fact that the Jets don't need him out there, and they that's not how they operate their defense. They just rotate everybody, and they're going to let Thibodeaux go in there, and they're going to utilize him for his strengths and build up his weaknesses until he's an all-around solid player.
Yeah, you nailed it. And especially with a guy like Lawson coming back, he's not going to have that pressure to go out there and be the best pass rusher on the team from day one. So I really do. I like him a lot, and I think that all the negative stuff about him is just I think it's really dumb, to be honest with you.
I will say, just before we move on to the next hypothetical, I am starting to get a little worried that Thibodeaux's not going to be there at 4.
Oh, same, dude.
I saw you put that as a note, and I've been thinking
today
about that.
Like the more, because I guess go rewind like 2 or 3 weeks, we liked Thibodeaux, but it was still kind of that question mark, like, okay, how do the Jets feel about him? Like, what do we think compared to these other guys? As we've really gone into it, like, I'm so much more confident in, I would love this pick if I were the Jets. And then I start thinking, okay, well, there's 3 teams ahead of us, all of which could use an edge rusher, so it is kind of scary. And in that case, I personally do think Hutch is a tier above Walker and Jermaine Johnson. I think that it's definitely KT and Hutch, 1A, 1B, and then the other 2 kind of a tier below. But man, I really would love, either of the guys, but I would really love KT to fall.
Yeah, it's just uncomfortable because we know for a fact, at least the way that their team is currently constructed, that the Jaguars are going to go edge rusher at 1. Like, they're not going to take Icky. They're not going to take Evan Neal. Just they have their offensive line set. Picks 2 and 3. You need one of them to go tackle. Because what if you're sitting there at 4? Thibodeaux's gone, Hutch is gone, and Walker's gone. Jermaine Johnson at 4 is a little bit of a reach to me.
Right.
Do you go the offensive line? Do you go Sauce Gardner after you just brought in DJ Reed on a big contract and you have a couple of guys that show promise? I think you do. I think that's where you go. But that's where it gets really uncomfortable for the Jets is, holy shit, our top 3 options at edge are all gone.
Yeah, I definitely do agree. And I think in that situation, Sauce is the best option. But my thing is, I really don't see Icky not making it in the top 3, because you said it yourself, he's your number 1 prospect. I feel like one of those teams is going to just say, I'm going to take the best player on the board. you know, so we'll see.
Yeah, really interesting. But I'm glad to see that we're both. I knew we were both Team Thibodeaux, but just in the grand scheme of like if everybody's available, I like that we're on the same
Yeah, I
page there.
honestly didn't have like a full on rankings until since the last time we did the podcast, but just getting deeper into it, he's it clearing away. He's the guy that I want.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad we agree. And it sounds like his visit went very well with the Jets as well too, from the way it's been reported.
Right. I do feel like it's just the most likely scenario where if he's there, they're going to take him. I feel like
Right.
that's what most Jets reporters believe. That's what most people think is the best thing. Like, yes, you can argue with it, and there's all these other arguments for why not. But when you keep your ear kind of the ground as close as you can, it seems like KT's the pick.
Definitely. Okay, cool. So on to the next hypothetical. We're going to switch to the 10th overall pick now. Teddy, would you rather keep the 10th overall pick or entertain a trade back scenario?
I want you to answer this one first.
Okay, I'm team trade back. I'm always team trade back. And that being said, I love if Drake London is there at number 10. We've talked about how he's, both of our top guys. He's a guy that I would love to pick at 10. Where I always err to is what is going to be the best way to accumulate draft capital, accumulate good players for this team, because at the end of the day, it still is, if you compare to every roster in the AFC, it is in the lower half, in the lower third of just overall teams in the AFC currently. So I was using the trade value chart. I was kind of looking at what those deals would look like. Moving back 5 spots with Philadelphia picks them up a second, and I believe an extra third the following year. You can trade back to 20 with Pittsburgh and pick up a first the following year, like the Bears and Giants did. To me, when you can always keep building up for the future without having to give up too much of your value, that's where I love it. I've seen a lot of people say it, and I've said it as well too. Picking between 7 and 20 of this year's draft is really where you get the worst value for your contracts, for your picks. So to me, if I can slide a little bit back further in there while still being able to add players, I always err that way. And just to take a look, and by the way, I should mention this. I do have my NFL draft newsletter through a email system that I'm using, drops daily between now and the draft, positional rankings, mock draft, big board. Tomorrow, when this podcast comes out, I've got my wide receiver rankings, and this is one of the big reasons why I'm pro team trade back. I've got my 5 wide receivers are top 20 players in this draft class, and I believe moving back to 15 or even moving back to 20, you'll be able to get one of those 5. So maybe you don't get Drake London, and maybe you miss out on Jamison Williams. I still think the value is there for a Treylon Burks or the Ohio State kids, where if you can add toward next year's draft, which is unbelievably loaded at just about every position, I would always do that. So I'm just always team trade back. I think the teams that trade up, unless you are landing, your franchise quarterback, they're always the teams that lose those deals. So I love watching teams be able to trade back, maneuver the draft board, and still come away winners.
Yeah, first thing I'll say, Blake's draft newsletter, go to his Twitter. Probably that's the best way for them to find it, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
That is awesome. I mean, especially if you're not
Thank
super
you.
dialed in, and just being able to like kind of get an overview of the class and the players and whatever team you're a fan of. If you just want to know kind of, especially as you get deeper, it's really awesome to just have that information about the players. So definitely go check that out. And then in terms of would I rather keep the number 10 pick or stay or trade back? I do want to say that I definitely think that Joe Douglas is going to be making trades in this draft to get more picks in 2023. I think with the capital that he has, it just makes a lot of sense. And it's just kind of his MO to make sure that we're continuously going to have that draft capital. But I do disagree. And I'd rather stay right at 10 and make the pick. And the reason for that is the idea of getting cute just scares me so much. Yeah. And I fully understand what you're saying. You're saying, okay, all of these top 5 receivers are going to be top 20 players. So we can go back to 15 or 20 and still get one of these guys, which, as we talked about on, I think it was our first or second episode when we dove into the receivers, all of those 5 guys are great. And I would love to have any one of them. But what I want, and I know it's selfish, but I want the Jets to get the best receiver out of the 5. Like, I want them to go out there and say, this is our guy. We're going to make him the best. And he's the best player. And so I just don't want them to get cute. I just want them to, when you're at 10, grab it, and if they do trade back and they get a guy, I'm not going to be upset. But if they say, okay, well, we want Drake London, hopefully he'll be there at 15, and then he gets snagged up and they settle for someone else and it just doesn't work out the same way, that's just where it really becomes heartbreaking to me. So I'm scared of getting cute. I'm going make the pick.
It does get a little bit difficult. You're right. It does get cute when you're trying to do stuff like that and just be like, we're going to manipulate the board as well as we can, but then you can't predict what other teams are going to be doing. So you are kind of just it is a gamble to take, especially if the Jets have their guy up at the top. I say that, I did a PFF mock draft simulation with this scenario where I moved back to 15 and Drake London was still available. So that's maybe why I'm just like, yeah, I'm fine with it because my guy was still there. I would be upset if the Jets traded back and Drake London went 11 to the Commanders or to Philadelphia. So that would definitely bum me out a little bit just from, we've talked about how much we love the fit with this offense. So I agree. It's cute. It does roll the dice a little bit.
Barring what happens in the top first 9 picks, like the Jets, there's a chance they're picking the first receiver off the board, right. Maybe not 100%, but there's definitely a chance. And so when you just think like, okay, whoever you have at the top of your board, go take him. It seems too good to pass up.
Yeah. The only team I could see going wide receiver would be Atlanta at 8. But even then, they're a team kind of like
could draft anywhere.
You could draft any position for that team. So, okay, good. I'm glad we're not going to agree on all 5 of these because I think we do a really good job of agreeing on things here, but it's nice to be able
a good job of that.
To look at a few different things. We're going to move a little bit further into the draft with our next Would You Rather, and we're sticking with trades. This is something that I've seen on a few mock drafts recently. I believe it was Mel Kiper, or it was one of the ESPN guys that had this situation happening where the Jets traded back into the first round. And I believe in this mock draft, they had taken Linderbaum, the center from Iowa, to really, really shore up that offensive line for the Jets. I mean, what a great fit that would be. But taking a look at that in general, would you rather trade back into round 1 for a third pick in that first round, or would you try and just keep and save the rest of the draft capital that they have?
Yeah, this is another one where it's kind of just a toss up, like whatever they do, I'm not going to be super upset, but I would love if they traded back up to like 25 or something like that and maybe picked up some 2023 picks in exchange or whatever it would be. And I would just love the idea if there's a guy like Linderbaum right there out of Iowa where they can just say, that's my guy, I'm going to get him. Because that's the thing with the center, Linderbaum out of Iowa. I think he would just be such a great fit. And we all know, remind me the Jets center's name, Connor McGovern.
Yeah.
Connor McDermott. They all, Greg Van Roten, Connor McDermott, Connor McGovern, they all are like the same to me. It's
what? Oh, what are you waiting on?
No, I'm saying whatever. Who's our center?
It's one of the Connors. Now you've got me mixed up. So
doesn't it get all confusing?
It's McGovern. It's McGovern. Okay, good.
All right.
I knew that.
I'm not, I mean, you say what you want about the guy, but realistically, he's not going to be there next year. And just getting a fit like a center who's going to come in and be able to start, or even if he doesn't need to start, is going to be able to be that solid backup. I would really like it if they want to say, go ahead and get your guy. I'd love for them to trade back up 3 first rounders. It would be great. Well,
and we kind of saw the team do it last season when they saw Elijah Vera Tucker and they said, that's our guy. We're going to trade. We're going to get that guy. And they made the move to get it done. So, we have seen them. If a guy is falling, comparative to what their board is, they'll make the move up to make sure they get him. So I'm team keep them picks personally, especially day 2. And I sound like a broken record. I have 118 players that have received a second or third round grade for me. It's one of the deeper classes. Right now it's at 118. Yep. That receive round 2 or round 3 grades for me. It's one of the deeper classes I've evaluated at that position. It's very small up at the top, but extremely deep right after that. So to me, you're sitting there, picks 35, 38, 69, and then what is it, 111 in round 4? And
I think so. That
117.
or
I believe it's
108.
I think it's 110, 111, and then 117. They got 2 pretty close to each other. But for me, I just think let the board fall to you, unless, like I said, if there's a situation where it is Linderbaum and he's falling a lot and they're like, well, this is the finishing piece to what is going to be one of the best offensive lines in football next year, then I guess get it done. But to me, when you have a team that has a ton of holes on defense, you could still use a receiving tight end, backup offensive lineman later in the rounds as well too. I would just rather keep all those picks and just start plucking away at those other positional needs. But
yeah, and I do think it's important. Like the Jets still do have so many holes, and
right,
I keep
we need to
like
fill
saying
them.
this linebacker, and we could use another safety, and we could use more offensive linemen and defensive tackles, so to be able to get 2 guys that are still top 40 players, like I said, whatever they end up doing with these, trading up or keeping them, they're going to get guys who are going to be able to help the team, or they
Right.
better.
And that's the best part of this. They're all hypotheticals. Just a would you rather. Moving along, we're out of round 1 now. In this scenario, the Jets have gone edge at number 4, wide receiver at number 10, like we all expect them to. Taking a look at those 2 positions again, would you rather the Jets double up at edge or wide receiver by the end of day 2? So that's with either picks 35, 38, 69, or potentially another trade to acquire a pick in rounds 2 or 3. So you're sitting there day 2. They've already taken 1 edge. They've already taken 1 wide receiver. Which one would you be more comfortable them doubling up on? Or what would you kind of want to happen more there?
Yeah, that's another good one. I feel like I can't even decide, but I am going to say receiver just because I think this is a kind of a good receiver class. I feel like we say that every year now, but
Mm-hmm.
it is just like a deep receiver class, and but maybe not in terms of like that 4th, 5th, 6th round. Maybe it's more the day 2 kind of guys in the 2nd and 3rd round where the depth of the class is. So to me, when you're thinking about it in that perspective, going a receiver and getting another guy, like you said at the beginning, if we take a big bodied receiver, going and getting another guy who's maybe smaller and can fill that role, I think I'd just be more comfortable because I just have more confidence in our D line. But yeah, that's another. All of these, they're great hypotheticals because it sounds good either way. It's hard to answer.
Yeah, we're gonna agree on this one too, and it's I guess to me, keep taking the shots on improving the offense. What if by any stretch, maybe you take Jameson Williams at 10 and maybe he's not ready for the first 2 months of the season. You've got another guy in there, another rookie that, like I said, it's just one of the deepest positions coming out of the draft every year now. It is just receivers grow on trees. So, if you're sitting there and you're like, okay, we drafted Jameson Williams at 10, we need a healthy rookie receiver to come in there and kind of fill the void, go that area. And then another side of it too, edge. And we talk about the defensive line. They've got a full room there, or a pretty full room at least at edge. And especially if they're picking, Thibodeaux or one of those rushers at number 4. So to me, when you're rotating that many guys and you've got a deep enough room as it is, I wouldn't see that as an area where I'm like, okay, you desperately need to add a second guy at that position. So I agree. I would go wide receiver. To me, the defense is going to be much improved. It's the passing game and making life easy for Zach Wilson that we've talked about for the last month now. And we've seen in free agency, we'll see in the draft when they take a receiver at 10, you can never have enough skilled playmakers. Because look, if it's funny. I've seen people start to talk about this, and I know that we don't want this to be the case, but say Corey Davis has an underwhelming year. There seems to be rumblings when you take a look at the contract that he would be someone that could be easily moved off of after next season. And it's a lot easier to make that decision if you have two stud rookies that have done very well in their opening year. Not saying that you have to do that, but I've seen a couple of guys. I saw Connor Hughes tweet about it, that it would be pretty easy to move off of Corey Davis and his contract because that third year is not guaranteed. So it'd be a little bit easier to do so if you feel comfortable about the receiver room. So when you look at the financial side of who's under contract on the defensive line, who's under contract at wide receiver, I would rather start investing into the long-term future of receiver, where edge, you've got in, John Franklin Myers has been paid. You've got, Thibodeaux potentially at number 4. You got Lawson on the other side, more depth pieces there. I would probably just say have a more solid backup plan for receiver in case, Corey Davis doesn't make it to year 3 of that contract.
Yeah, and I think again you're nailing it. I agree exactly with what you're saying. And this wide receiver room, it's still at least 2 players away, in my opinion. Like, we're gonna take a guy high in the draft and or trade for one of these stars, but as much as we want to see Denzel Mims be great, like, we can't. Let's say Corey Davis has a down year and we get 1 or 2 injuries. We can't be. Last year, Vincent Smith and Jeff Smith are playing over Denzel Mims. Like, we can't be sitting there giving Zach Wilson no wide receivers again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's late in the year. We want to see some improvement, but sorry, none of our starting receivers are playing, so we're just going to have another excuse, and we're not going to be able to really evaluate anything. So I totally agree that the wide receiver room just needs more work.
And it almost seems and I'm looking back at all the visits that the Jets have had at this point, it almost seems like that's the way they end up going. You take a look at the edge rushers they visited, it's all guys that are going to go in the first round. Karlaftis,
Yeah.
Thibodeaux, Walker, Hutchinson, and then who was the most recent one? Jermaine Johnson. They're looking at wide receivers in later days, like we mentioned today with Bo Melton, Tazier Mack, a couple other guys as well too. So that could be them kind of showing their cards a little bit, that they probably will double up at wide receiver at some point. So yeah, I agree. It's just, we're on the same page here with that one. I was going to start off with my surprise question, my surprise hypothetical.
I forgot about the surprise question.
I forgot about it too. And now it's not as funny because I was just going to blindly hit you with it before we even started them. But would you rather draft Zach Wilson's replacement this year or next year?
Oh my God. Please is what I have to say to that. First of all, you're a Zach Wilson believer, so don't make me mad.
I love him.
Second of all,
I had to do it.
I am so, like, I can't even, and I know it's just the Jets fan in me taking over, and I did the same thing with Darnold in his second year, but which Zach Wilson has already shown better than Darnold did in his rookie year, but I am so bought into Zach Wilson. I really think he's going to make the step. And I think he's got it. And it all comes down to, like, I keep going back to it, but it's fixable mistakes with Zach Wilson. Like, he can improve on the things that he was bad at, and he has the ability. I'm so bought in. So we're never drafting his replacement because he's going to be our quarterback for the next 15 years. Clip that. We're the Jets. Once we're fucked in a year, I'm going to be pissed.
I wish we did this podcast at the start of the Sam Darnold days, because think about how polar opposite we were with that. Like, I was so sure it was not going to work out. And I know. And we really did not see eye to eye on that for a couple of years there.
I'll give some insight into how that went down for me. I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to college football like that up that year. But I remember being like, I just don't want Sam Darnold. Like, I don't think he looks athletic. I don't think he looks good. And then the Jets took him, and I got, like, my brother in my ear and all these NFL people, and they're like, oh, Sam Darnold's going to be great. And don't get me wrong, Sam Darnold could, like, make some stuff happen that gave you hope. But I just bought in, like I'm doing right now, like I always do. But I think the difference is just, like, the natural ability of Zach Wilson compared to the natural ability of Sam Darnold is just, like, not comparable. Exactly. Like, Sam Darnold just truly doesn't have arm talent.
My favorite
That's
thing
why
with
he's
Sam
back.
Darnold. Yeah, my favorite thing with Sam Darnold, and we don't need to spend too much time on him, is everybody going into that draft was like 72 completion percentage in college. And then you look at the throw chart and it's like 60% screen passes. It's like, yeah, UFC had a spread offense where it was just get the ball outside of their playmakers and let them go do
It's the
stuff.
same thing
So
they did with Drake London this year.
it's
Literally
crazy.
the same exact offense. That's what they
So
do.
so yeah, so that was just a fun one I wanted to throw in there. The answer is
That just got me
2023
fired up,
because
dude. So good
yeah,
job
hey,
because I
defend
was just
defend Zach
rolling.
Wilson. He's woken up. We got Teddy back on the pod now. Okay, perfect. All right, awesome. Well, look, let's finish up with one final hypothetical. We're going to be looking at 4 different backup positions here. Ones that, right now you take a look at the room, probably not room for a starter unless you're taking a guy there at pick number 4 or 10. And so these are going to be some day 2, maybe early day 3 picks. You've got 4 positions. You've got a backup tackle, backup running back behind Michael Carter, backup tight end, and a backup cornerback. Would you rather take running back, tight end, cornerback, or offensive tackle first before the other 3?
Right.
And this
right.
one's a little bit tougher. Do you want me to go first? Because I combined 2 instead there. I know we've.
No. I got you. I got you.
Right.
Here, what I want to say is what I'm putting last is tight end. And I know that seems like a pivot from what a lot of Jets fans might think. We all got so like into the tight end class and the tight end free agents,
Big
so I think
time.
it makes a lot of sense. Everyone was really excited for Trey McBride, but once we went out and signed Uzama and Conklin, it really doesn't seem like too big of a need to me. I really like a third tight end is going to be fine, but he's really anyone we draft in these 4th or 5th rounds, it's not going to be I don't know. They're not going to be like a star, especially right away. So I'm really not too worried about the Jets. Oh, who's our tight end of the future going to be? Because in my mind, I'm looking at these next 3 years and I feel like we're already fine with who we have, who I want them to take first, I would definitely say would be tackle, because I think that, like we've said many times, Mekhi Becton and George Fant, there's still so many questions. It doesn't seem like we're going to take a Kwanu early. So I just think shore up that offensive line and just make sure that if injury comes or if Becton or Fant doesn't play as well as you want them to, you have kind of a fallback option that maybe can turn into your long-term option,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the place to really invest first. Running back, like we've said, there's a lot of guys that will hit, and who knows what round it's going to be in. And then cornerback, I definitely think they should take a guy. I just don't think it's as big of a need as tackle.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with the HB tackle at number 1 out of those 4. I do think I'm going to not push back, but I do want to give a little bit more credit to the tight ends, because I think that if you can get that wide tight end, the more of like a receiving guy, not that that's a huge role in this offense because they like to do the 12 personnel with blocking tight ends, but I think being able to add in maybe a slender guy like a Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State, the hometown kid that grew up loving the Jets. There's honestly a few guys that I think would be really nice receiving threats for the Jets, where it's like, yeah, Conklin and Uzama are going to take up the snap count. They're going to be in there on the run games, in the run game, but being able to get a pure receiving tight end, and it's like you said, it's tough. Tight end is probably one of the longest developing positions when you transition from college to the pros, unless you are a bona fide star coming out and you're a guy like Kyle Pitts in his rookie year. It takes a while. George Kittle took a while to pop off. Kelsey took a little bit to pop off.
That's one of the most like historically, like it's going to take these guys
takes forever
until year 3 or 4 or 5.
Exactly. So I do think that I agree. It's not my number 1, but it is something that I wouldn't hate to see them address, at pick 111 or 117 with one of those 4th round picks. There's actually a couple guys that have really, kind of popped out late to me in the process. Kate Otten out of, I believe he's Washington. They wear purple, so I'm hope it's Washington. And then Jelani Woods out of Virginia.
The Huskies.
Those are 2 guys. Oh yeah, shout out Sarah Pristash. But yeah, I go tackle just because, like you said, the security of that position right now isn't the most comfortable for the Jets with their tackle situation. So even if it's a guy that can kind of fill in case of an injury or in case someone takes a step back, I think that's the best way to go. I do think, and it's tough because when I take a look at what the Jets are trying to be, I just go to San Francisco because that's just what they're doing. They're San Francisco at this point.
Right.
And what San Francisco does is they draft a running back every year. It's late rounds. It's, it's mostly day 3. Some guys really work out. Some guys are like Trey Sermon, where they can't get on the field in the rookie season. So it is tough to project what running backs are going to fit in this offense. You try and just take guys that are in those wide 9 or those wide zone schemes, which is a guy that they've brought in. South Dakota State's Pierre Strong Jr. Was in a wide zone offense, would be a really nice fit behind Michael Carter. It's nice to see that they only did a virtual meeting, but still an FCS guy will be available mid-day 3. That is a position that I think, and I wrote about this the other week, I don't like the idea of Tevin Coleman being our RB2 heading into next year. I just don't. He's off one of his worst seasons of his career. He's getting up there in age. I think he provides a ton of value as a coach who is very familiar. I mean, he's traveled with Mike LaFleur from Atlanta to San Francisco, now to New York. Like, he's just there. He's been around. He knows the offense. He can help out these younger guys, but I don't love the idea of him being an RB2. And even if Michael Carter starts to take this RB by committee backfield by the balls, and he's just the lead guy, I love that. You still need quality depth behind him. So I do think that is maybe my number 2 behind tackle, and it's pretty close between the two, but like you said, with the way Becton and I'm blanking. The other tackle,
George Fant.
There we go. Yep. With them probably not being, surefire studs for years and years beyond. I think it's always nice to try and invest in backup offensive linemen. You can never have enough good of them.
Yeah, and just to touch on the running back room, I'm like, there's no chance that the Jets are coming out of this draft without taking a running back at some point. Right. First of all. And I totally agree. I mean, I love Michael Carter. I do. I love it. But I am not at all sold that the Jets' plan is we're going to have Michael Carter and he's going to get 75-80% of the work. Like, I don't think that. And while Tevin Coleman's one of those guys who seems to be a fine backup, he's not good enough. Exactly like you just said. I still really want them to draft or to sign Melvin Gordon. He didn't sign anywhere yet, right?
He visited with Baltimore. I don't believe.
Yeah, but he was gonna. Yeah, I still really want that, or maybe another guy. But I definitely think they'll draft someone. I think it could happen at pick 69, nice. Which would maybe make chasing 69, which would maybe make a lot of Jets fans kind of mad just because of the value of running backs or whatever. But there's good running backs at the top of this class, and they're likely, it's possible none go in the first round. They might not even start going until mid to late second round. So I do think there's a world where one of the top 2 or 3 guys is there for them, and they want to go for it. Maybe it seems like they wouldn't do that at 35 and 38, but maybe.
Yeah.
But I do definitely think that, as much as I love Michael Carter, I think that they got to do something to address this running back room.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Ty Johnson to me is a guy where it's I don't think he's a good fit for this offense. And his yards per carry was what, 2.8 last year or something? He
didn't do great. I do think he shows burst every once in a while. And I think especially 2 years ago, he showed a lot that I think a lot of people didn't think that he had. And he still is a pretty young guy. I think he's 24, 25. Yeah. So, I mean, I think he's fine, but yeah, he is coming off a bad year. I would like to see them get a guy in the draft and see him really flourish, a bigger kind of change of pace back compared to Michael Carter. But we shall see, like we have with all these hypotheticals.
Exactly. They're all hypotheticals. We're all just throwing darts.
There is one thing I wanted to quickly touch on before we wrapped up.
Yeah.
We were talking about receivers and we were talking about Jameson Williams. And I think when we discussed it, me and you both were kind of conservative with when we think he's going to come back. But did you see that he said, I think he said, I got injured in January. It's a 5 to 7 month recovery. I'm aiming to be back by training camp. Which, I mean, what do you think of that? I still think, what up, Bush? That's Blake's dog, by the way. I still
We're gonna
think
cut it out so
that.
they can't hear it.
All right, that wasn't Blake's dog.
Yeah, it's the fun part about being able to edit these things after is I don't want to make
Yeah,
anybody listen to a
a
boring
dog
dog
barking,
scream. Yeah,
or my girlfriend coming in and
yeah.
attacking me. But I just think Jameson Williams is such a great player, and if he was going to be able to be back, and even if he's not, it seems so like silly to be like, oh well, he's not going to play the first 6 games, so we're not going to draft him. But I mean, have you heard anything about Jameson Williams coming back? Do you believe that he'll be back?
It makes sense just in the fact that everybody is recovering from injuries at a speed that we have not seen before. Achilles used to be a year plus. Now it's almost like 9 months. ACLs are a lot shorter. So injuries are across the landscape. It was kind of the same thing. It's like almost kind of the same thing with Jalen Waddle last year. People weren't sure if he was going to be ready to start the season. He had an injury in college. He was the first receiver off the board, a 6th overall pick, and he was absolutely electric in his rookie season. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, I guess, if his timetable had changed to where he's now ready to go at the start of the season. I had just heard and listened to other people say the fact that like the Jets are just sick and tired of starting the season 0-4. They don't want the season to be over by the end of the first month. So I think that's where a lot of the narrative about getting a guy who's ready day one came into play. But yeah, I mean, look, I finally finished, and I can say this because my this pod drops at the same time. I ended up final grading. Jameson was right above Garrett Wilson, so I did put him at number 3. So I think I've kind of changed since our last conversation where I had Wilson at 3. I've flipped them since then, and now I've got him as my 3rd overall wide receiver in this class. He's a game changer, difference maker with his speed. Not afraid to engage in contact. So look, if he ends up being the 10th pick for the Jets, I'm not going to be upset. I've just always placed a preference on larger human beings. Like them big, I like them chunky. So that's what I look for in the NFL draft. So that's it's not going to be a pick that I hate because I do think he's a very talented player. I just prefer a guy with size like Treylon or Drake a little bit more.
Do you think that should be the name of this episode? We like them big, we like them chunky.
We like them big, we like them chunky. Is that from that song was in, I heard that song for the first time in Madagascar. You remember with the big hippo? Yeah, great movie.
Gloria. You know who was the voice of Gloria?
Nope.
Jada Smith, Will Smith's wife.
Awkward. You know who else was in that movie?
Chris Rock. I know, dude.
maybe that's the title. We get down to the bottom of the
I'm so mad that I even brought that up because I hate talking about that. But
I know I don't think I've heard anybody talk about it for like the last 5 days now, finally. And you just had to come in and bring it back into my life.
It's the same thing I said with like the Zach Wilson mullet. Like people just start talking about something and I'm just like, why did we keep talking about this? But
and you did it.
But that's the name of the game, you know.
You brought it back.
Got to get your tweets out there. Yeah, I know.
All right. Well, I think that does it all for our hypotheticals there. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. A lot of different options that the Jets can go with. So yeah, unless there's anything else you wanted to cover today, I think that just about does it.
I'm good. You know, I apologize for being sick and kind of having a robot voice.
Honestly, it doesn't sound as
back. I'm sorry I went on vacation. That's good to hear. Thanks.
Some people these days.
But yeah, you know, hopefully next week I'll be a little healthier, have my head in the game a little better. But I think we had a good conversation. And next week, you know, that's when it's crunch time, right?
Yep. Not cutting time. We got
the draft will be a day after we drop the pod next week.
Yep. So we'll figure out what we're gonna do then if we want to do like our own mock draft. It's almost here. The following week we'll celebrate the Jets' great success. Whatever they did, we'll celebrate.
I already know it's gonna be great.
Unless they draft Sam Darnold again. But
I don't think they can do that.
I think we'll probably just have to do a case race at some point and do a pod over that, and we'll race each other 1v1 in a case race. But
sounds lit.
That sounds great. Yeah, we were talking about how dead it's going to be after the draft, but we'll find stuff to talk about. Maybe we'll get like an oral history on the New York Jets through the eyes of Teddy.
Yeah, I got a ton of stories to tell from my Cortland years when the Jets were doing training camp in our old hometown. So tune in for that.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you so much as always for listening to this podcast, everybody. Chasing 69, a New York Jets podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_chasing69, over on our YouTube channel, which I believe is the same thing, NYJ_chasing69. Teddy at Teddy Huncho, me at Blake Andrew Pace. Make sure to also follow along with my NFL draft newsletter there. Keep trying to guess what Teddy's burner is. I like the idea that the more listeners we get, people try and scour the internet for your burner. So maybe we'll make that like a little Easter egg for our show. No, it won't. You're right. Maybe we shouldn't be saying that.
Or maybe it will.
It's not like we only have 45 followers on Twitter.
Dude, we're almost at 50. I'm getting amped. We're going to have a party.
We're getting
and then we'll get to 100.
And then we'll be bigger than Rogan.
Yep. That's what's going to go down.
Amazing. Well, the race to beat Rogan. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you next week. Take care.